Well, hello everybody. Welcome back. Welcome back. Today we are going to be following along with our recent theme of videos, which are top favorite books of insert period here. So I just recently posted, or the last two videos I posted were my top 5 favorite classics pre-20th century. And then I posted my top 5 modern classics of the 20th century. And today I want to top that off by doing my top 10. We're going to do 10 today, okay? Because I couldn't do less than that. My top 10 favorite books of the 21st century so far. I think this is also kind of interesting. It was kind of fun to do because of the recent New York Times top lists of the 21st century so far. It's been fun to look at those lists. You know, I'm a sucker for lists. I love them. Give me all the lists. But I wanted to also do my own because that's what's really important, what we personally resonate with, things that personally change your life. So these are, I guess, my top 10. This is in no order. This is in no particular order. Wow, so much of my hair just fell out. It's been happening. It's been happening, and it's, I guess, a bummer, but whatever, we're moving on. We have Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro, which I read in January of this year. Seriously, this was on both of the New York Times lists, the readers one and the original one. This was number 9, I believe, on both of those lists. But Never Let Me Go, I've talked about multiple times already this year. We follow our main character, Kathy, and we hear a lot about her 2 closest friends, Ruth and Tommy. And it's about their childhood and their young adulthood growing up in this boarding school somewhere in England. And they have a lot of rules at this boarding school. It's them growing up. It's their relationship with each other and all the other, their classmates, the students, their dreams for their life, and their lives. And yes, this is one of the most emotional, quietly emotional, creeping books that I have ever read. This book really creeps up on you. The meaning and the significance of this book comes at you very slowly. It's a very slow read. And if you haven't already read it yet, please do yourself a favor and do it. I mentioned this the last time I talked about this book, but I have previously read another book by Kazuo Ishiguro called Clara and the Sun, and I didn't like it. I really didn't like that book. It was my first book I read by him, and it put me off picking this up specifically because this one is the one I hear about the most, and Remains of the Day, but mostly this one. And it really put me off picking up any more of his books, and I'm so glad that I finally got over that and read that this year, because holy cow, it makes me sad thinking about it. It makes me sad thinking about it, but it's a great book. It's a great story. I think it does what literature should do. Literature can do a lot of different things, but it does what it's doing really darn well, you know? The next book I have on my list is Call Me By Your Name by Andre Osman. I read this book a couple of years ago, and I just love this book. I just love this book so much. I mentioned in my top 5 favorite modern classics video, Giovanni's Room. I mentioned this as a book-alike to Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin, and I just love the themes that both of these books are exploring. Well, I guess I'll talk about Call Me By Your Name, but they're both exploring the relationships that we have and can have with other people. They're exploring loneliness and solitude. They're exploring the fact that we are all always one singular person, that we age. Well, this book, Call Me By Your Name, maybe not Giovanni's Room, but Call Me By Your Name has so much beautiful imagery of aging, of decay, of time passing in that physical way. It's a very physical book. There's references to fruit and art and statues. It's just such a stunning book. I also really love the movie, but really I think the book is absolutely a must read for sure. And yeah, that's Call Me By Your Name. The next book I have on my list is Americana by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. I love Americana. Man, I remember reading this book and being just slapped in the face with like, this is what a good book is. Holy cow. Not that I hadn't read great books by that point, but still, I was like, wow, this is it. This is a great book. We follow our main character who was from Nigeria, I believe, and she comes to the United States, and it's about her trying to find her own footing in the United States as a black woman, as a young black woman, what it means to be black in America, what it just means to be a young girl in America or a young woman, her different relationships that she finds herself in, her thinking about politics in America. I think that it is just a phenomenally written book. And it is definitely a must read. Holy cow, I love that book. Chimamanda Adichie has a beautiful, lyrical, really sharply intelligent writing voice, authorial voice, that's the word. But I really think Americana is hands down one of the best books I've read so far from this century. And then we have a nonfiction. We have Upstream by Mary Oliver, and this book really brought peace to my life and perspective to my life. I guess when I needed it. I say that a lot, but we often need these reminders, right, throughout our life that it's okay to slow down. Not only is it okay to slow down, but just really putting your own life and your own purpose into perspective. Talking about nature and your relationship with nature. Yeah, I guess what your purpose is. I remember a line from that book really specifically that I was repeating to myself a lot, and I still do repeat to myself a few times, and it is, I wanted to head into the work of my life. I wanted to know that who I was. And I think that that is such a profound thing to think about. Like, we are not anybody but ourselves, and we all get so caught up in comparing ourselves to other people. I certainly do. It's not productive. I mean, what are you getting out of that? Like, nobody is you either, you know? Like, you're not getting anything out of comparing yourself. Follow your own individual voice and power and yearnings. That is what we're meant to do. That is good. That is important. We should not compare ourselves. So that's what that quote makes me think of. But that was just such a peaceful nonfiction writing that a really wise woman sat down and wrote, and I love spending company with wise women talking about nature, who I think really just have their priorities right on line. Then I considered whether or not I should include this next one, but I really feel like I should. Okay, we have Normal People by Sally Rooney. I am not like a Sally Rooney fangirl by any means. I did not care for Conversations with Friends one bit, and Beautiful World, Where Are You is good, but not like anything that I remember reading. It's nothing that changed my life. I don't think it was entirely significant in any way. But Normal People, I think, is a special book. I am sure all of you know what it's about, but if you don't, it's about Connell and Marianne, who are two young people living in Ireland, and they go to the same high school. Connell does not have a lot of money, but he's popular socially. And then we have Marianne, who comes from a very wealthy family, but she is not popular socially at all. And they start up a relationship. It's about Connell not wanting to be seen with Marianne in high school with these dynamics. And then we see them go off to college. They end up going to the same college, and they continue this relationship, and their dynamics constantly switch in life. And I think that it's a really great social and class commentary, actually. I think it does a really good job, and I think that it's also an entertaining read. Like, it really sucks you in. You really care about these characters and their relationship to one another. I love the ending. I love the ambiguous ending, how life keeps going on, and it's not like a magical happy ending. It's a very ambiguous ending, and I think that that's kind of, again, just how life flows, you know? And the TV show nailed it. If you haven't seen the TV show, see the TV show. But yeah, that's Normal People. I also think it's been super influential to people's reading lives so far throughout this century. I think that it's been extremely influential in the publishing industry, in just people's reading lives, what people want to pick up. Next, we have The Colony by Audrey McGee, which is another Irish novel, and that was listed for the Booker Prize maybe 2-3 years ago now. That is all about language, so boy, was that a good book. Oof, that was such a good book. Man, you could really pick that apart. But we follow this guy, I think he's a reporter, but he goes to this small island off the coast of Ireland where all these inhabitants were, there's not that many people living on this island, maybe there's like 40 people or something, but they all speak Gaelic, and it's about the dying language, the dying Irish language. It's about how history molds language and how people perceive language and class. I thought it was just fascinating about little insight to the history too of Ireland and just these people's lives living on this island. And I think it's a really interesting read if you haven't read it yet, because I don't think it's like a super popular book, but if that sounds at all interesting to you, I'd really recommend picking it up. Next, I'm surprised that we haven't heard more people talking about this book since the year that it was published. But it was huge the year that it was published. It won the Women's Prize, and that is An American Marriage by Tayari Jones. I'm really surprised that we don't hear about that book way, way more. But An American Marriage by Tayari Jones is about a newly married Black couple in America, and they are traveling somewhere, I think to visit their family one night, and they stay at a hotel or a motel, and there is a crime that happens at this motel the night that that young couple stays there, and the husband of this couple is blamed, wrongly blamed for this crime, and he's sent to prison for like 10 years, I think. And we see letters back between the husband and the wife. They've only been married for like a couple of months at that point. We see how that affects their relationship. We see their relationships that develop between people around them, and how where their lives go from there. And I'm just shocked we haven't, like, this book isn't all over the place constantly, because I think that it is not only an important book, but it's just good. Like, it's so well written. It is so well written. Because I also hated some of these characters. Like, Tayari Jones wrote these characters to be real people, and I did not agree with the decisions that they made all the time. I really disliked them at some points, but I could also totally see where they were coming from. I could see, like, they were in really difficult positions, so what else were they supposed to do, you know? This is just how their life turned out, and I thought that it was a really complicated, really realistic, beautifully written book. So An American Marriage, totally recommend. Next, we have a book that was also, I think it was featured on both of the lists. It was #1 on the Reader's Choice list, and that is Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. It was my favorite book that I read last year. It won the Women's Prize also last year when it came out, and that is essentially like a retelling of David Copperfield, kind of, but set in the American South. It's about the opioid epidemic. We follow our main character, Demon Copperhead, which is his nickname, but that's his name. It's about his whole life from conception to the point where the book ends. And that felt like a real person, a real story, a totally real place. You just loved Demon Copperhead. So well written. Such a fascinating, again, look at addiction and how one can become addicted to opioids, and how that affects somebody's life, and just real relationships between families and family members and friendships. It has to be on this list. So yeah, Demon Copperhead. Okay, so now we're at the last 2 books that I put on my personal top 10 list. Now, I don't think either of these 2 books are like necessarily objectively best written books of the century so far, but when I was looking through my list of read books, I couldn't leave these 2 books off of my list just because of the experience, either the experience that I had reading them or the profound effect that one of them specifically really left on me. So we'll start by talking about Anxious People by Frederick Bachman. This is a book, gosh, I forget exactly where it's set. Maybe it's like Sweden or Switzerland or Norway, I'm not sure. But we follow a large cast of characters during a day where they're all viewing, like, they're at like an open house, they're viewing an apartment or a house, and then someone like turns the open house into a hostage situation after robbing a bank. Anyway, so the open house turns into like a hostage situation. But it's not like a super tense book. It's like really, really heartfelt. And it's about how everybody's like struggling with something. It turns into being a book about depression and anxiety. Obviously, it's called Anxious People. And it's about how modern life is just difficult. How life is just difficult and everyone is trying their best. And I think Frederick Bachman just did a really great job with it. Again, it is so heartfelt. I think it is so moving. So I really just wanted to give Anxious People a call out, and I totally think it deserves to be on this list. Okay, I put it on the list, all right? Okay, so the last book, but not least, that I have on this list is The Marriage Plot by Jeffrey Eugenides. Now, this book had probably one of the biggest impacts on my life and my reading life specifically, but on my life. So The Marriage Plot, we follow 3 young college-age characters, and we hear about their relationships that they have with each other. So we follow 1 girl and 2 guys, and this girl has kind of like some sort of relationship with both of them. One of the guys ends up becoming her fiance and husband. That guy has bipolar disorder. And then the other guy, there was kind of like a will they, won't they situation, but they essentially are just friends. And this other guy ends up spending a few years, we follow him like traveling through, I think it's India or somewhere in Asia, and he is doing spiritual work, he's doing volunteer work, and he's talking about spirituality, he's talking about philosophy, he's reading a lot of books. And the books that character was reading in The Marriage Plot all sounded super interesting to me. I hadn't read anything like that at the time that I had read this book. One of the books specifically that he mentioned was A Confession by Leo Tolstoy, which is one of my favorite books of all time. That book was like, love that book. I've already talked about it, but I remember that's why I picked that book up, because of The Marriage Plot, because that one character was reading it and I loved the way he was talking about it and I wanted to read it. So it really changed the trajectory of my thinking life, of my reading life, the way that I thought about the world. Also, the other male character that I mentioned, the one that had bipolar disorder. I have never read a better depiction of bipolar disorder, and I have personal experience with it in my real life. Like, hands down, that was like, it could not have been a better representation of bipolar disorder, like at all. So that was a really profound thing for me to read at the time as well. And I just thought it was really, again, just really well written. It really changed something about me in my life. I don't know how else to say it. I felt like it really changed my life in a way. So I had to mention The Marriage Plot by Jeffrey Eugenides. But yeah, that's The Marriage Plot. Really love it. I don't know if everyone would really love it, but it was just such a profoundly important book for my life that I feel it necessary to mention. Yeah, so that is my list, my top 10 favorite books of the 21st century so far. Please tell me what yours are. I would really love to hear it, dude. I'd really love to hear it. So please let me know what your favorite books of the 21st century so far have been. Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.